Remember, girls, show the world. Let them know it's Halloween.
Now, I'm gonna assume that the 3-part potential Halloween resurrection that I went over last video didn't go over so well, as Chaos Comics went belly up in 2002, the same year that Ben Affleck was voted People's Sexiest Man Alive, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man hit theaters, and Halle Berry became the first black actress to win an Oscar. What, they're all technically comic related in one way, form, or fashion. After Chaos went kaput, Stefan Hutchinson wrote a special comic for the 25th anniversary of the franchise, to be sold at the, now this is a mouthful, Halloween Return to Haddonfield 25th Anniversary Convention in Pasadena. Lucky for us that it is now available for general consumption, and fun enough, it is canon with the H2O timeline, which is the first 2 movies, as well as Halloween H2O and Halloween Resurrection, sadly. This is also backed by Compass International Pictures and everything. The one-shot is, of course, One Good Scare, written by Stefan Hutchinson, with art by Peter Fielding. So we start off with an introduction to Dr. David Loomis, the son of Sam Loomis, who goes into his father's career, even ending up as a shrink at Smith's Grove. Apparently, in the H2O timeline, Sam Loomis still has a huge obsession for Michael Myers, but I'm not sure why. The H2O timeline is actually the worst timeline when it comes to Dr. Sam Loomis. I mean, sure, you have Halloween 1 and 2, but then you jump straight to H2O and Resurrection, half of which took place on the same night, and definitely has Michael and Loomis being blowed up at the end of that night. Anyways, so now David Xanatos is our main Loomis, and after we meet his token black friend, whose only defining character trait is being a patient prodder, we are told of a new patient, Lindsay Wallace. That's right, Lindsay Wallace, the little girl from the night Michael came home the first time. And she's just a bright ball of sunshine with doom and gloom, talking all about the boogeyman coming, as well as her saying how not crazy she is. Which makes total sense that she'd be in a facility like Smith's Grove if she weren't. However, this is where the seed is implanted about David and his daddy issues, as she changes the subject to Dr. Sam Loomis. We don't get to hear what she says about him, other than his name is now almost a curse in Haddonfield. But then we hop to later, where David is going over his dad's notes. This leads probably to my most unironically favorite flashbacks in any Halloween media, because it's Sam Loomis having a heart-to-heart with young Michael. Granted, this does lead to him giving Michael a gun, screaming for him to shoot him, but it's just a fantastic page. Yes, like every other really interesting thing about Loomis, it's sort of relegated to a page, even though it could have been the story all by itself. But enough of that interesting thing, we then cut to David and Lindsay having a talk all about why people think she's crazy. Because she feels Michael Myers is still out there, to which any good psychiatrist would tell her that it's a natural effect of a traumatic incident and would generally be treated outpatient, not locked away forever. That little rant of mine, of course, means very little since she did see Michael Myers back last Halloween, sending her back through her psychological issues. But the why is interesting. Dr. Dave doesn't understand why he didn't kill her, but Lindsay has a theory that since he showed himself to Lori before he tried murdering her, Michael wants to scare Lindsay, to be the boogeyman, as it were. Well, that was a quick scene. Onward to Halloween night, and when it rolls around, Lindsay has to be sedated and strapped down to her bed due to having some psychotic fits, but Loomis stays with her. Meanwhile, Michael is, of course, killing everyone at the hospital on his route to Lindsay. Lindsay slips her restraints, or Loomis gets her out, that's a bit unclear, but it's too late. She can't escape, as Michael is face to face with her. But Dr. Dave, yeah, it really does feel weird calling him Dr. Loomis, finally sees the shape that has haunted his father, and he feels the same fear. But Dave grabs Lindsay's hand and they run away, with Michael just walking after. This is to no avail. Trapped in a security room, Michael takes Lindsay, but David hides under a desk, too afraid to do anything, even save her. Yet Michael leaves David a very nice treat for a future trick, a smashed photo of David with his father Sam, and Lindsay is grossly impaled in a pumpkin patch. Hutchinson wanted to bring Michael back from being a standard supernatural slasher like Jason, and I think that this really shows a pretty good job of it. And for some reason, though, it took 3 whole years for another one-shot to be put out. Still written by Hutchinson, this time it was put out by Paranormal Pictures, who I know absolutely nothing about. This is Halloween Autopsies. We begin at the early life of a boy whose dad was a projectionist. Kids at home, projectionists were the people who worked at movie theaters because long ago, films came on things called film stock, and they had to have their reels switched. Was that too condescending? No, it wasn't. So anyways, one day while watching Night of the Living Dead, well, because using the thing from another world would have been too cliched at this point, I guess, his father died, breaking the illusion and magic of the cinema forever. Smash cut to years later, where he's a hard-drinking photojournalist. But the story here is that Sam, the young dumb blonde boy here, is coerced into taking the photojournalistic case of trying to find any proof that Michael Myers is still alive. Oh hey, double points for Carter being one of those guys who gets off on seeing dead bodies. Anyways, he does go to Haddonfield, where in this timeline, which I think is just after part 2, cause the hospital explosion was the last time Michael was seen at all, Dr. Sam Loomis has taken residence. And yes, he still has his Zuko scar from the ending of the second one. Nice. And that is where we learn that Carter may be in fact a terrible photojournalist, cause Loomis catches him while he's being followed and confronts him. That night, however, is more troubling, as Carter imagines his girlfriend rotting away at a morgue. Yeah, it's gonna be one of those comics. Next day, he breaks into Loomis's place to try and get the lowdown on what's going on with Michael, but all he finds are pictures that I just can't show here. I mean, YouTube has flagged me for even just naming videos things before. Short answer, it gives him another horror boner, but it does lead to him thinking of this kind of metal image. Then we hop to Carter watching Loomis at the park when Sheriff Brackett comes up. There's a hefty amount of Brackett having this emotional breakdown about Annie, who if you remember was killed in the first Halloween movie, and it's actually kind of an intense moment, mixing in Carter's narration with the dialogue. After Brackett leaves, there is a stillness, until Loomis calls out to the person watching him. Carter thinks it's him, but then Loomis calls out for Michael. Carter turns, and there's Michael standing right behind him. That means that Carter is killed, and he's the body being autopsied throughout random points in the comic. The next comic in this chronology is the advertised Sam comic, which was available free on HalloweenComics.com, but that isn't even available on the Wayback Machine, so unless one of you folks out there can get it for me, I sadly have to skip the last days of Sam Loomis as told by Stefan Hutchinson, which is really sad to me, because he's been a fairly solid writer for the Halloween franchise. So solid, in fact, he was brought in for the Devil's Due Publishing stint with Halloween. While the franchise may have gone off the rails since 2008, the Rob Zombie reboot meant that the franchise was, in theory, able to truly expand without needing to focus on any of the classic characters we know and mostly tolerate. Which brings us to Halloween Nightdance. Hutchinson is back because who knew that he'd be the Scott Snyder of Halloween material, but for Nightdance, the art is handled by Tim Seeley, who I know as that hack slash guy to his annoyance, and you at home may know him as the guy who is currently making Batman all sorts of awesome, or had if you're watching this in the far future, when I'm just making videos about, in my day, comics were good. Yes, that's also a terrible joke, because I kinda do that now. Also, the Nightdance books have some of the best covers ever. I just wish I could find clean copies, because I would pay to have these as posters. Right, so Chapter 1, A Shade in the Void, sets up that he hasn't been seen since his original massacre, so maybe they're just going with only the first film happened, or at least that's all we know about. But it officially begins in, Russellville, Illinois. Okay. And it's the year 2000. I can dig it. And with some fantastically overblown poetic narration that never leaves us, we learn that this mystery girl is a bit troubled by the dark and the monsters. Although if you take this scene as a build-up, I'm kinda hoping by the end of this she's going to be the boogeyman. After being woken up from a nightmare the next day, she receives a letter in the mail, but she seems happy about it. Though with lettering like that and the scratched off start of a different name, I would suspect someone's threatening me. But it makes her happy, even though she doesn't open it. But hey, it is the best way to learn her name, which is Lisa. Quick cut to 2 people in Chicago, heading out to check on a family in Russellville. Yeah, that'll be important later. But then things get dark, as a girl is bound in an abandoned building, her wrists cut. Scattered envelopes with JUD written on them, at her feet. Oh, I get it. It's for Judith Myers, not Julie Newmar fan letters. I was way off. Oh, and her boyfriend, I think, is being killed off panel. I do like how they show that Michael stole like every mask ever. That should really keep the Ben Tramerings down this year. Back over with Lisa, we meet her two friends. One is staring at her compact applying makeup, and the other is a dude with spiky sloppy hair and a leather jacket. Sure, I think we learned their names, but come on, look at them. More importantly, Lisa decides to open the letter she got, which has some very creative drawings. I mean, I'm really hoping this isn't from the boy she used to babysit like she said, cause if so, this may in fact be a Good Son comic. At least Michael Myers violently censored his pictures. Oh, and over with, let's call her Captured Kathy. Her boyfriend is most certainly dead, but she's able to escape and make it to the door, running off into the dark and stormy night. I'm sure that this scene of Ryan and Marcy, the people from Chicago, driving along, expositing about having sex after they make sure everything is alright, will in no way impact—
Someone said impact!
Yep, they hit Captured Kathy as she flees from Michael, causing them to also veer off the road and into a tree. Marcy gets out of the car to check on the woman. She's alive, but Marcy gets Michael's machete-length kitchen knife through the sternum. Michael drags her into the darkness, leaving Ryan bleeding by his car. I'll say it just one more time that I absolutely love the writing and art in this, even if it can be a bit over the top. It truly does capture Michael as the boogeyman like the original film did. And with one more nightmare exposition from Lisa, she gets another letter, and she gets picked up by cool leather jacket guy. I swear I will not learn his name by the end of this. He is such a non-character. So they can skip school. But Michael Myers is the best truancy officer as he watches on. Careful, kitty, Michael has been known to eat pets. Issue 2 is The Silent Clown, and we get more from Lisa as she dreams about Daniel, the little boy she used to babysit, being knocked out in what looks to be a root cellar. But enough of that. Lisa and her hopefully interestingly gutted later friends are at a Halloween carnival, with no foolin' the creepiest clown ever. Just let it stare into your soul, and you'll feel the darkness like a raven slathered in tar in a cemetery on a new moon eclipse. Oh god, I think the narration has infected me. Actually, this trip to the carnival does lead to a really nifty carousel moment that I'd love to see in one of these movies. Him getting closer and then, when he's almost there, nothing. But when they go to investigate, it's just an oddly shaped bunch of trees. If I had any budget here, there would be a photoshopped Slender Man right there with the voice of Merrick from Yu-Gi-Oh! Bridge just going, "Now it's just a Slender Man." Laugh, it'd have been hilarious. Oh right, there's also the other story going on, and Ryan brings Captured Kathy to the Russellville Infirmary. Then we get a flashback for her backstory. Her and her boyfriend Ben were checking out this old abandoned home in the middle of nowhere for a Halloween party. Apparently there had been some hacksaw murders there, so nobody wants it. And they're gonna check it out to make sure it's at least structurally safe for a mad rave. I don't think any of them are safety inspectors, so I see a problem here. Though there's your real problem, an infestation of Michaels. Once you get those in your walls, you just have to move. Okay, so skipping some love triangle BS, I think, Michael enters a hall of mirrors at the same time that Lindsay is opening today's letters, and we get the crux of why Michael is after her. She looks like Judith, the sister he madly butchered when he was 8, or 6, or 7. Really depends on who you ask. So after some flashback mirror things that has tons of boobs, and a child's drawing of Lisa's spread eagle, none of which I want a black box, so just imagine what it looks like when you drew it at age 10. It's just as unsexy now as it was then. But that ends with Michael stabbing Lisa's reflection in the mirror. Symbolism! Also edgier than most 2000 edgelords. He didn't even punch the mirror to show how edgy he is, unlike on the original cover. Huh. We're with Ryan now, who wakes up in the hospital with the sheriff asking what happened, and obviously he tells the truth, which doesn't make the young sheriff happy. When the sheriff leaves though, Ryan busts a window open to escape. Hey, remember Lipstick lovin' friend of Lisa's? Well, she's making a jack-o'-lantern at home and wondering why she's not good enough for cool leather jacket guy. Side note, I can't stop thinking about how angry that bear is drawn. Seriously. There's a knock at her door and she applies lipstick because that's her thing. Yet there's no trick-or-treater here. It's of course slap-happy Michael. Yeah, Michael goes Wayne Brady and has to choke a bitch. Yeah, I'm using that old school joke right there. But Michael doesn't kill her here. No, he actually goes and gets an apple, puts it in her mouth, paints a clown smile on in a legitimately creepy moment before cutting the apple and her face in half. though I do get the feels with her dying thoughts, apologizing to her parents, and begging, hoping that they won't be mad at her. But hey, let's end this on the perfect comedic timing as Michael loads Nikki, yeah, now that she's dead, I will give lipstick friend a name, into the trunk of a car, while Ryan weeps over a candy wrapper in the foreground. Okay, maybe I'm just morbid to think of this, but this is a screwball comedy moment of just, look up, man, look up! Chapter 3 is A Rainbow in One Color. Yes, let me change my pants at these covers, then let's get to Lisa and a flashback as she tells Cool Leather Jacket Guy all about what actually happened to her that scarred her 2 years ago. She and Daniel were walking through the woods and came across the evil cabin in the woods. Daniel went in first and falls into the cellar. Lisa goes in to help him, but when she starts screaming for help, Michael comes and shuts the door. They were found days later, and neither of them were the same since. And Daniel's mother keeps sending Lisa the pictures of her that he draws each day, though she isn't quite sure about the new pictures. They then head back to Lisa's home, where Cool Leather Jacket Guy suggests that she takes a shower to think straight, and then they talk about Nikki's crush on him, so while she goes to shower, he decides to call her. Will Michael's still bloodied hands, and Sean, yeah, he gets a name now because he's grown on me, but honestly, this is truly the best scene in absolutely any Halloween thing ever, original film and everything. Sean realizes the line's dead and he sees a blood trail from the back door and starts screaming for Lisa. Lisa, of course, is in the shower, and we see the shape's shadow on the shower curtain. But he doesn't try to kill her. He throws a dead cat in the shower with her. Then, as she's stumbling out of the shower in terror, Michael kills the lights. He turns them back on just to look at her. We get a page that I truly wish I could show on YouTube to actually go through some of the symbolism here and how it could have really affected Michael in a very specific way towards his sister Judith. But this is YouTube, so you just have that picture. Sean races up the stairs only to get choke-tossed back down the stairs. However, after that, Michael just leaves. Sean, with his raging teen hormones, decides to chase after the 7-foot-tall mass murderer, but frankly, I just really want to spotlight how well the psychological aspects of this story do really wrap beautifully throughout it. So Lisa does get dressed, arming herself with a kitchen knife before running to get help. And the only place she can think to do is run to Daniel's, where she also runs into Ryan, since that's the family he and Marcy were going to check up on. But when they try to go in, Ryan cuts his hand on the door. Someone has put razor blades on the inside of it. Elsewhere, Sean chases Michael into the cemetery, where he finds an open grave. The grave is Nikki's, before Michael smacks him across the back of the head with a shovel, but with his last breaths, Sean asks Michael to leave. They're just teens. What could they have done to him? And that is where he officially earns his name. Yeah, that'd have been funnier if I hadn't gotten sick of just saying Cool Leather Jacket Guy, and there was way too many failed takes of me trying to go CLJG without breaking flow. Sue me. And we end with the other poignant line of a teen girl wanting to grow up, but not wanting to grow old. I don't want to stop, so part 3 is When the Stars Come Crashing Down. It has a brilliant cover. Beautiful. So Lisa and Ryan get their way into Daniel's house, but it's terrible. The whole family has had their throats slit. Lisa runs out and they get into the car to head to the cabin in the woods where it all began for Lisa. And they do go in. Me personally, I would have burned the place down and hoped for the best. That's if this house were flammable at all. I mean, Michael has had way too many fires in this decrepit place for it to not literally be made of asbestos, because that's flame retardant material. Anyways, Michael poses like the Patterson video Bigfoot and leaps from the rafters to attack. He gives Ryan a nasty gash across the face, and Lisa runs off. In a bit that may actually be the key to Halloween H2O's ending, Michael bashes Ryan's head, taking one of his spare masks, cutting out Ryan's tongue, and putting on the mask. Groggy, dazed, and just in utter hell, Ryan, wearing Michael's mask, mind you, lurches out of the cabin. Oh, did I mention the police now have surrounded the cabin? And it goes down the way you think a small-town sheriff's station with enough firepower to take over a Texas Piggly Wiggly would handle it. Ryan's dead. As for Lisa, well, she hides in the only place she can, the cellar. And we get the theme of this story, maybe. Death waits for all of us. The black emptiness swallows us whole and crushes us into nothing. But that's what makes it so beautiful. That's what makes each tiny moment ours. We laugh in its face. We defy it to the end. Our eyes never close. But then again, Lisa does get buried alive, so hey, maybe the real theme of Halloween as a whole, as a franchise, has always been sisters are secretly the worst thing, so we should kill them. Yes, I'm mostly joking, although I have several scars because of my sister, so maybe I'm adding some personal demons into that. Ultimately, Nightdance is probably up there as one of my all-time favorite Halloween media franchise things. And yeah, I do think it is because they ditched everything that made Michael Myers the character from after the first movie. And just for personal points, this is actually the main comic I read every October. And yes, if I ever get to go to a convention where Tim Seeley is, this is the book that I would have Tim Seeley sign, because for me, the art is literally damn near perfect. Well, this and Army of Darkness vs. Hack Slash, but that's for different reasons. But next week, we reach the final leg of the Halloween comics, where we get a midquel about after the night he came home. So hopefully you tune in next week to The First Death of Laurie Strode. And hey, since I'm finishing this at 5 a.m., I'll keep the outro short. Please comment what you thought of any of the comics I've talked about, or if you have a suggestion for the next comic we should do. Also, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and show us some love over on Patreon. We have 2 fantastic patrons now, and a wonderful producer that only gets us so far. Or just share us around and give us a subscribe. We're not even at the 20% mark for the 1K remonetization goal. But more than anything, I'm the Comic Archivist, and stay golden, Inklings.